And welcome everybody to Keeping It True by You LSU Tigers. This is our first installment of our LSU series, and we're certainly thankful for you joining us back for another episode of Keeping It True by You, providing you some of the best takes and information on your sports teams as soon as we can get it to you, as fast as we can get it to you. This week we had some interesting things that came out regarding what Brian Kelly said in a post-practice presser on Wednesday. We have a little bit about some of the new basketball schedules that just dropped. We're going to talk about those sort of in the middle of the episode, and then as we end things, we're going to take a little bit of a broader look once again at the upcoming game against USC. Of course, we have our odds there as always in the sidebar in the layout screen for those of you watching over on YouTube. Some things to take away here. We want to, of course, start off with sort of where the team is at. Where is the team currently? What did Brian Kelly have to say about his team? He had this quote that came out during this post-practice presser where he says to put together the best and safest way to get your football team ready for its opener, limited injuries, and then went on to talk about many other things as far as preparation, so forth and so on. A little bit broken there, but we've had worse broken English. Thank you, Les Miles. This is one thing that I think you have to start off with where the team is in camp, is they are trying to keep the injuries down. They're trying to keep, as far as the amount of total practice time, high as possible, and they're doing so far a reasonable job. Now, there are some injuries to talk about. We're trying and not make too much of them, as it does appear that all these players are still viable to play in the game against USC, so I'm not too worried about it, but I'll give you some of the ideas of what you're looking at. Sage Ryan currently is dealing with some hamstring issues. Wes Weeks has a strained foot, and then Miles Frazier is dealing with what appears to be a more serious injury, but again, all of these players seem to be at least doubtful at the worst, if not probable, for the USC game, so I'm not really too worried about it at this particular moment. Just some names to be looking out for as we continue to progress through camp and getting ready to head out to Vegas. So beyond that, I think when you look at what that means, you hear, a name like Sage Ryan, that's a key secondary player. What does that sort of show as an impact overall on this team? And I think it's a reminder that this team has to improve on defense. What was seen last year on defense was not acceptable, and I think that's due to the many different situations. You had players that, of course, didn't finish the season for you. You had the tragedy that went down as far as having the mid-season critical illness from Greg Brooks, where your secondary was never whole and it never quite got itself together. But one thing that we're seeing from Brian Kelly is that he's saying we're not seeing the blown coverages. We're not seeing the just inabilities to get off the field. And that is one of the main things that will be critical for this team as we progress further into the season. You're going to get punched in the mouth against USC, whether you like it or not. I don't think it's necessarily going to be the biggest onslaught, but it is something that is going to happen. That USC offense, Lincoln Riley's very talented, will march his team down the field, and there will be some scoring. I certainly hope there isn't, but realistically, I'm going to keep it very real for you all. That's why we keep it true by you. That's the name of the show. Double pause for those of you watching. But it is important to note, along with that, it is also so critical to know that, when you're seeing this different coverage, you have a lot of players that got playing time last year. Now, the question always is when you play through bad circumstances, how much quality time do you gain compared to less time in good circumstances? I'd like to believe that overall this program tends to make the most of what it's given. You look at a player, and this is not the best example, but someone like a Keyshawn Butte, who was going through a mess of a season in 2020, but showed that he had talent and was able to progress himself throughout the remainder of his time at LSU, remaining competitive and a key player on the team, although we don't need to go much further than that. I think particularly when you incorporate that aspect to it, when you really understand on the surface level that the secondary will be more whole this year. It may not be solid, but it will be whole. You combine that with the fact that Brian Kelly is expecting to play 5 to 6 defensive tackles, 4 to 5 linebackers, and 5 edge rushers throughout the season. So that means you're going to have a hot rotation of somewhere in the ballpark of 15 to, I'd call that, give or take if you include everybody, 25 players that are in a constant rotation on defense, where you were very thin last year beyond recognition, where you were maybe playing a very lean 18 players. You were playing maybe even leaner than that at moments, and that really showed itself as you got into the season. You started having games like the Ole Miss game where you couldn't stop anybody to save your life, and that really set the team back from being a national championship level performance to a legendary performance. Thank you, Jaden Daniels. But it didn't produce that sort of, national championship aura that is normally surrounded around a Heisman, which then you have many other discussions that open up. Fact of the matter is, it's now Brian Kelly's third season. He knows what he has to do. We, the fan base, knows what he has to do, and I think he's ready to do it. Some other things before we switch over to basketball real quick. I just want to make some notes on this. The backup quarterback decision. This is something that's going to be going on, I believe, into the season. So it gives you a little bit of a reason if you're wondering, should I buy those tickets to go see Nichols? Should I buy that ticket to go see UCLA? I think it is going to be something to watch out for, because if you have the Tigers open up a nice lead on, say, a team like Nichols, and it's, 49 to 10 at the middle of the third, I think you're pulling Nuss and you're playing these other quarterbacks in extended series. You might see 2 series of, say, a Ricky Collins, 2 seasons of AJ Swan, and maybe even a season of Colin Hurley. Series for all of that. Apologize, a series. But what's so important there is that in discussions regarding the role, Colin Hurley was clearly at one point considered the automatic 3 or 4 whenever he came on the campus. But there's now starting to become a little bit of a motion to get him propelled into a number 2 spot. And I think that shows that the young man, for this measure, very young man, 17 years old if I'm correct, is showing that he is dedicated to doing the job correctly. That's one of those weird situations where sometimes you're thrown into something too young for you to know better. I feel like he is the type of person who can accept the leadership necessary at this very young age, and I'm excited to see how he continues to develop. Obviously, you have very talented quarterbacks coming in next year, and it's going to be probably a lot of portal action going on, but I'm very excited to see what happens this year. I'm excited to see how the playing time works out. Fact of the matter is, even if he is a 3 for the rest of the year, you still have your 4 games in the regular season plus the bowl game. So the only time that he should be playing outside of redshirt limitations would be if he actually were to be taking over in a major injury situation. So it's good to see that you might get to see some of those quarterbacks deeper into camp, deeper into the early parts of the year. But, as far as who is number 2 today, from what I saw at the spring game, from what I've been able to witness with my own eyes, I think that you probably have to give a slight nod to Ricky Collins. Slight nod, just barely. Although I think AJ Swan certainly is talented enough to be able to assume that role if you need to have him go extended series in the season should something happen to Nuss. Right now, we're going to hope that we don't ever have to worry about that, but it is the reality that you have a lot of varying talent levels beyond your starting quarterback. And with Nussmeier clearly far and away being named a starting quarterback, is understood he's a starting quarterback, he's now also in a position to where he has to take on an entirely different role. I was there the night that he came in for Max Johnson against Arkansas as a freshman and, lit the world on fire. And a lot of people thought that was going to be what you got. Of course, then Jane Daniels comes in 2 years later. We're back here again with Garrett Nussmeier, but I believe that showed the spark. Then the Georgia game with the injuries, that showed the talent. And you combine the talent, the spark, and the knowledge that you gain from being on the sideline for 3 years at this point now, this is the perfect formula to where, I've interacted with some of the people close to us. I believe that he is ready to take on this role. There's a reason why he never transferred beyond the fact that he just loves LSU. The man knows that he's in a position to succeed, and man, you got to love someone with that kind of drive. So quick break here as we transition over to the basketball schedule release. We're going to talk a little bit about that here. Not too long, of course, but we're going to just give you a little bit of tidbit, something to look at, some games you might want to put on your radar, mark the calendar down, maybe come in for that big tailgate. We'll get you knowing a little bit of that here. So we start off with men's basketball. This is one, and to give some quick, notes on the team where I believe it stands. With Matt McMahon now in year 3, it's Matt McMahon's year that he needs to make the NCAA tournament. I believe with the talent that he's brought in, period. I don't think there's an expectation that an NIT berth would be good enough. We saw how last year, I think if you would have gone a little bit deeper in the NIT, you probably would have had a different discussion regarding that experience. But the fact that you had an at-home bounce doesn't look great on the program. And, thankfully you didn't see major transfer portal issues. You're bringing back some of your best players, and you're also bringing in some very talented first-year players for the team. So we're excited to see that. Season's going to tip off on November 6th, so that will be Wednesday night at the PMAC. You're also having some very interesting overlaps, so you're going to start off with this game against ULM, so in-state opponent. We love that, to tip off on a Wednesday night. Then you're going to go the Sunday after the Alabama game against Alabama State, SWAC opponent. So 2 opportunities to get warmed up. But that following weekend, this is a very big challenge for Matt McMahon and his Tigers. They're going to go to Manhattan, to Kansas State. That's Manhattan, Kansas, and play a Big 12 team that, is not exactly the strength of the Big 12. They're not the darling of the Big 12, but that's a very strong basketball conference, and it'll give you a quick, honest taste of where you are as a team. A few weeks later, you're going to go over to the Greenbrier tip-off. That's, of course, where your Saints formerly had training camp about a decade ago. Nice golf resort and overall athletic facilities over in West Virginia. They're going to play Pitt out there, and then they'll have some other tournament-style games. Some other places of note, you're going to have Florida State coming to Baton Rouge for the SEC ACC Challenge. That'll be a very nice team, a very nice marquee game. Weird timing, though, where it is with December 3rd, so that'll be right around finals time for any students listening as far as, where you're going to be at there. That means you should have a good crowd, but it may not be the best crowd, but it should be full in the PMAC, and I certainly am looking forward to going out there. That's also going to be the Tuesday after the football regular season ends, so the Tuesday following the Oklahoma game. Again, we tie it all together better than you're going to hear anywhere else. You want to know how you plan your weekend. You want to know how to set your calendar. That's what we do here on True Bayou Sports Media and True Bayou Media in general, but you'll know more about that in the coming weeks. We're excited to make those announcements on the channel. SEC play is going to tip off January 4th against Vandy. You have some nice home games. You get Texas at home February 1st. That's a Saturday. PMAC will be bumping then. You'll get Ole Miss at home, so back-to-back Saturdays, February 1st and 8th, against some very motivated opponents, as we'll call it. You'll get to go to Oklahoma, so for those of you looking to make your travel into these new SEC opponents' home venues, Saturday, February 15th, you'll get to go over to Oklahoma. In between is your usual midweek type games. You have a trip up to Bud Walton. You have South Carolina coming in. Some fun things you could see there, maybe. Those teams usually can keep it pretty competitive. A nice midweek against Tennessee. Maybe that'll be a nice Tuesday matchup. Good national TV presence. And you're going to end the regular season at home versus Texas A&M. And look, if Matt McMahon puts together a solid season and he's pressing for an NCAA tournament bid, he's got a rough end of the year. He's going to go Tennessee, Mississippi State, and then ending the season at home against Texas A&M. I'd like to believe that's a chance to maybe pad the resume to be able to look a little bit better before you go over to Nashville to the SEC tournament, but who knows? And like I said, we're going to keep this quick. We're not extending on basketball. It's not time for that yet. But we're going to go over to the women's side. We're going to take a look at their schedule. Sorry about that for those of you listening. That was a little bit of bump on the mic. But you start off the regular season. Of course, women's basketball does play exhibition games, so you'll see two in-state opponents, Xavier New Orleans, LSU Alexandria. Those are whenever you see LSU post scores that the women's team beat somebody 120-30. That's the type of games you see there. It'll be nice to see the team, but it's not a game 4 record, nor would it have any impact. So you start the season off with a great opponent in Eastern Kentucky. No disrespect to them, but certainly one of the mid-majors that you don't often call upon down here in this particular market. Fun one here. You're going to have LSU versus Northwestern State at home the night before the Alabama game, so November 8th. That'll be a fun one to take the family out if you want to get to see some women's hoops, get to see some of the new freshmen, Jada Richard, as well as some of the others, of course, Michaela Williams, Anissa Morrow, Floje, everybody that you love. You then have, of course, the women's schedule is a little bit different, but you're going to go after that game. You're going to go 4 straight at home through Thanksgiving week before the team heads out to Nassau, to the Bahamas. They're going to be in the Pink Flamingo Championship. Those teams are not yet announced. A quick trip back to Baton Rouge, NC Central, Sunday. Cool if you want to go out and see a nice thorough game. You get Stanford at home again, another quality women's basketball powerhouse. That's going to be Thursday, December 5th. Again, I wish these weren't so close to finals for our students, because you really want that student section to be rocking for these, but I don't think they'll have a problem filling it. Stanford is a perennial powerhouse in the women's basketball game. It'll be a fun one, much like when Virginia Tech came in last year. We're going to get to enjoy that. Then you have what I call the homecoming series that gets started. So you'll be heading up to Bossier City to the Brookshire Grocery Arena, for those of you in the 318 who are very familiar with that place. You'll be taking on Grambling there. That's a Michaela Williams hometown return game. Sort of get the North Louisiana fan base going. I think it's very important for LSU to play one game of some sort in the Shreveport market at least once every 5 years or so. It's just a nice thing to do, and it certainly gets that North Louisiana fan base charged up. Very glad to see that that's on the schedule. You'll get a couple interesting ones. You get to go to Connecticut to play Seton Hall right before Christmas, December 17th. You'll also, on that same road trip, go over to Illinois, Chicago, which will be at the Credit Union 1 Arena, and that is for Anissa Morrow to get to play a hometown game. So very fun to see there. After that, SEC play will kick off on January 2nd. So right after New Year's, you'll get things going, but that will be in Arkansas. So we won't get to see that here. As far as some of your major games that you'll get to witness at the PMAC, you have some fun ones on the schedule. It may not be quite as fun as last year was. Of course, the biggest game to start the year will be South Carolina. That'll be SEC Game 6. That will be at South Carolina. So, of course, you're playing the defending national champs. You'll love to see what they provide you with their best. A lot of your marquee games are on the road to start. You also have one against Tennessee that's at Knoxville. You get a couple fun ones, though. You're going to go on a 3-game homestand against Texas A&M, Oklahoma, and Mississippi State to end out the month of January going into February. That'll be some fun ones to see there. A quick trip up to Missouri before you get one back in Baton Rouge against Tennessee. Always a nice women's basketball powerhouse. They bring a lot of energy when they come to town. LSU, again, if you are trying to make the new SEC road trip, they're going to the Moody Center to play Texas on February 16th. I've been to the Moody Center, be it for a concert. I enjoy that arena. And for those of you who really want to nerd out on sort of where the sports landscape is, the Moody Center is probably going to be the closest thing to the new LSU arena that's going to be built. So if you want to get a feel for what a new college sports arena, trust me, it feels nothing like the PMAC. It's a very nice venue. I enjoy it. I enjoyed being there. Definitely a place to go check out if you want to make a quick weekend road trip. trip. But like I said, Tigers will be playing at the Moody Center against Texas on February 16th. And then you have a couple more at home, Georgia and Ole Miss, but not a lot of carnage out here. You're not getting multiple games against South Carolina. You have some relatively favorable sets of games here. You'll have to go Memorial Coliseum, which is Kentucky. They don't play at Rupp, they play at Memorial. I believe also volleyball shares that venue, and Coleman Coliseum at the end of February there, so that'll be kind of a little bit of just road noise. But I think Kim Mulkey's looking like she could have a very deep run. I think a lot of people are underestimating this Tigers team because you lose a name like Angel Reese, you lose that obviously world recognized talent. This team is still full of world-recognized talents, make no doubt. We'll be very much paying attention to what goes on once basketball season gets going in just a couple of weeks. Because remember, camp opens. That's when we start talking about it. We don't wait until it's tip-off time. We don't wait until the first week of the year. Of course, new network. Sorry, football, we had to wait a little bit, but you get where we're going with it. All right, back to football here, just to talk a little bit about things before we wrap up the episode. Thank you all for listening if you're still here at this point. We, of course, appreciate the interaction. Of course, drop your comments down in the comment section. Let us know how you feel about the upcoming seasons, be it basketball, football, and any of those dates that you think might be a fun one to maybe go out and, watch as a group, something like that. We're always interested in creating more community experiences here at True Bayou Media. So, some interesting points to discuss. And this is not going to be going as much off of Brian Kelly's quotes. It's going to be going off of, where we are as a program as we're getting closer and closer to the start of the season. I feel as though you have good, and this is to use a Brian Kelly word, synergy, alignment between what is being told out of camp and what is being experienced. Well, slight interruption on my end, but through the magic of editing, everything is put back together. So, as we were saying, I think as you're looking at this team overall, you're pushing towards something where, again, the reports from the media are lining up with what you're seeing from the coaching staff. And with those two things starting to show up, it really shows that there is a potential that there is at least some accuracy to what is being presented through media access, through what we know behind the scenes. It seems as though this team has taken a step from the defensive struggles of the past few years. And, I'm not prepared to say today that this team is so much better on defense that you're going to have no problems going into game one in Vegas. But it is certainly something to understand that it could be less of an issue than it was the past 4 years, where we had this, again, continued struggle to win the first game. That is, of course, the main focus, but you are right now favored. If we take a look over at the current settings of the odds, you're favored by almost a touchdown. Depends on the book where you're going. You have great odds as far as, where you're going to be, and there's certain differences between where you're going to get a prop or not, but I feel as though this team is better. I feel as though this team is not perfect, though. That over-under is still sitting at 64. But that's just one metric to judge it by. We'll certainly be looking at some more. You'll hear more about, of course, what's coming up, getting ready for Vegas on Keeping It True Bayou Sports through our LSU episodes. We might even throw a little bit in the In Louisiana one. Don't expect too much from that. That's primarily non-LSU content. But you will definitely hear about it on prime time on, of course, True Bayou Sports Media Prime Time. That is going to be our Friday evening show. We certainly invite you to come listen. We're going to be talking about some of the Saints preseason game 3 setup and getting ready for college football kickoff, which will be covered in Keeping It True Bayou in Louisiana. McNeese will face Tarleton State on August 24th, and football will be back in the Bayou. And of course, we're so happy to see that. We're happy to see that you stopped by, stayed till the end of the episode. If you're already here, you might as well like and share where you're at. Let everybody else know where you're hearing the best content in the Bayou region. And we'll look forward until next time that we go ahead and we'll keep it true by you. Thanks, everybody. This has been a True Bayou Media production. This show is for entertainment purposes only and does not render legal or financial advice. Remember to bet responsibly. Distribution of this podcast is prohibited without the express written consent of True Bayou Media or its subsidiaries. Thanks for being true by us. We can't wait until next time we keep it true by you.